Hi, my name is John, and you're listening to Catholic versus Atheist.
Just start by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you believe, and how you came to believe what you currently believe.
Yeah, sure. I'm from New Zealand. I was raised in a place called Hamilton. I was raised Catholic. I went to a Catholic primary school, and then I went to a secular sort of high school. I lost my faith at about 15. There's logical reasons and there's sort of accidental reasons for making me question my faith. When I was 15, I was going through a little bit of a tough time, and I'd talk to God. Like, I don't know if you do this, but you'd sort of have conversations as you're walking down the street. Not really conversations, more of a monologue, but you assume someone was listening. And I was getting quite analytical about my problems, like, what happened here? Okay, why did that happen? Why did that happen? And I was like, okay, why am I talking to you about this? Then, okay, do you exist? Okay, I don't really know. Like, God was hidden. So there's a whole lot of other things people believe, they don't see it. So I was wondering, okay, why God? And then I thought about, I guess, if I was born in another place, I'd be brought up with quite different beliefs. I might believe in a different sort of metaphysics, maybe not a God, maybe multiple gods, maybe something else. And that gave me enough to sort of question where I was at. And I thought, okay, maybe I should see a priest and talk to him about it, or my family. And I thought, nah, this would hurt my family. And then I thought about the priest, and I thought, this seems like pretty good arguments against God. I don't want to hurt this person's career and destroy him, so I'll keep it to myself for a bit. So from there, I was agnostic for about 10 years. And then later on, my wife started reading The God Delusion, and I think Dawkins has something about if you don't believe in God, you're an atheist. So if you're not a theist, you're an atheist. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds all right. We'll be an atheist. And then since then, I've been, interested in the question and why people do believe in God. It seems really interesting to me, and, pleasant to find that there are some really smart theists around. I still don't fully understand their point of view, but they are quite good at knowing, say, what atheists think and defending against it and defending their own position.
Did you talk to your parents? Did you sort of come out of the closet as having questions about God, or was it just mixed in with all the other angst and rebellion, and you're not cleaning your room and you're not going to church, and it's all just mixed in with that sort of rebellion?
Well, yeah, I kept going to church, and I didn't want to bring it up because it just seemed like it would, it just seemed painful.
So to this day, you've never talked about it?
No, to this day, I mean, there's one point where my dad said something, like my wife's parents are also Catholic, but they know, and I don't know. I'm just a bit weak like that.
How did you meet your wife? Why were you attracted to each other? And what was sort of the magic moment where you said, you're the one?
Yeah, so we both worked at a supermarket, and we met in a staff room one day talking about the book she was reading, and she visited me in the butchery department, and one day I asked for a number, and turns out we were both studying chemistry at university 1 year apart, and we started hanging out, and yeah, just sort of happened.
Does your wife practice her Catholic faith or no?
Oh no, she's not Catholic. She's I don't know, agnostic.
Okay. What would you do if she later in life she converted or reverted back to her Catholic faith? What would you do? How would you react?
I'd be fine with it. It'd be slightly inconvenient, but I'd be okay. That's fine.
Would you go to church with her?
Maybe if she really wanted me to, but otherwise, probably not.
Okay. I'm just curious, by the way, when you were walking along and having an analytical discussion with God, and then you started to think, maybe I'm talking to myself here. Where were you walking? And by the time you arrived, had you lost your faith?
I was walking home, and I don't know if I quite lost it or not. It was okay. I'm not sure. I'll have a think about it some more, and then I think it was like a slow progression to okay. I'll consider myself agnostic now.
Can you just compare and contrast your adult view of metaphysics with your 15-year-old view? Have you matured? Have you grown? Have you read a lot of books? I know you said you read Dawkins. Have you continued to read and research and watch YouTube videos and debates and this sort of thing? Or is religion an interest for you as a hobby?
Yes, religion's interest as a hobby. I don't read that much. I more listen to quite a few podcasts. I try to get things from different sides and just trying to get people's views from people who are interested. I'll listen to some other philosophy podcasts that aren't specifically about religion, but also ones that are. So, and I have listened to, a fair number of debates, but not all of them. The William Lane Craig debates tend to be quite good, and he's good at defending against atheist arguments generally. So I think that those are good ones to listen to.
Before we get into philosophy, how do you like chemistry? I hate chemistry. I studied physics at university. I had to take a chemistry course. I hated it. Why do you like chemistry? Or do you?
I do love chemistry. It's just interesting to see how things work. Like physics is also great too, but I still went into chemistry because I was good at it and I liked it. So
it's organic or inorganic?
Well, I did my master's in organometallic chemistry, which is under the inorganic heading, but has organic elements, because I liked organic chemistry, but inorganic chemistry is good as well. Though most of my jobs have had to do with analytical chemistry, which can use both. So I've done technician roles in both using organic chemistry and inorganic chemistry. So yeah.
Okay.
Generalist.
What's your favorite molecule?
I'll probably say allene, which is it's a funny molecule. It's got 3 carbon atoms like in a line and 4 hydrogen atoms sort of at right angles to each other if you look along the line. It's just quite simple, but it's got quite an interesting symmetry. And my master's project looked at some molecules with this particular bond system. So that's what comes to mind right now.
Are there any good chemistry jokes? Groners, whatever, just the classics.
Okay, here's one. What's the formula for water? And you go HIJKLMNO. And the funny thing is that's H2O.
Okay. So that's good. You enjoy your work. That's pretty cool. And is your wife still working in chemistry or no?
Yes, she's officially atmospheric physics now. So she did a PhD and a postdoc in chemistry climate modeling. And now she's employed as a lecturer for atmospheric physics and chemistry.
So it is my firm conviction that if there is no supernatural, there can be no free will. What is your take on free will as an atheist?
So by free will, you mean a sort of uncaused sort of free will? Like you're just saying that's not caused by other things. That's all you're saying. Whatever the will is, it's not caused.
I don't define freedom positively. I define it negatively. It means it's not determined. It's not inevitable. You have to understand from the Catholic perspective, freedom is a mystery. It's not something that we can wrap our minds around. We cannot understand freedom, but we can, even though we can't comprehend it, we can still apprehend it. We can still say, I don't understand my freedom, but I know that I'm free.
Right. So you'd say it's necessarily indeterminate in some respect. So the ability to be free might have been caused by God, but there's something that is unpredictable about it, that if you knew everything about everything, you wouldn't know what somebody would do.
There's more to it than indeterminacy, because we could set up a program that has a random seed that will generate unpredictable output based on the clock of my CPU, but that doesn't mean my computer suddenly has free will, right? It's just like quantum physics. Just because there's a certain level of unpredictability doesn't mean that there's free will in the universe because of quantum physics. No, freedom is a mystery, but basically intuitively, it's self-evident. We know that we have agency and that we can choose and that there's morality, we have responsibility. We know these things. It's absurd to me that the atheist even wants to put that into question. I'm not saying that you do, but I'm saying that when I talk with hardcore atheists, they want to put a great big question mark over agency and over freedom. And at the same time, they want to have a moral high ground and to make moral judgments. But when I ask them if morality is objective and eternal, they say no. So there's a lot of dancing around that I find not very useful when I talk with most atheists about free will. And I don't want to pigeonhole you, but I'd like to get your opinion about hard determinism versus free will.
Yeah. I think determinism is likely true. Now, whether that's compatible with some sort of concept of freedom, I think it is compatible with the concept of freedom. It might not be free will, it might be a constrained will. I think when we make choices, it seems to me the choices are determined on things like our preferences or our nature. And our nature seems to be determined from our biology, from our environment, from our culture. So when we talk of freedom in this sort of determined framework, as long as you're not doing something against your will, that's freedom. It's constrained will, but you're still free in that respect.
Yeah. Are you comfortable with the compatibilist view of free will? Do you know what it is?
Well, I haven't read all the literature on the free will. So I guess it depends on what you mean by free will. And I think from what I understand, the compatibilists just define free will as a different way to the hard determinists. That's my understanding.
Yeah. Have you ever seen a German cuckoo clock where the little dancing men come out and do their little thing at certain times of the day? Have you seen that?
Yep.
So the compatibilist view of free will is that those little guys are dancing because the conditions are right for them to dance, and that it is a dance, and that's reality. Okay, so that's what they focus on. They say, look, we're not denying that there's a dance. The dance is real. The dance is cute. And the fact that it's just a machine inevitably following as the gears grind on, that fact is completely compatible with the fact that these cute little guys are doing a cute little dance at the right time, at the right place. And if a cat were to jump on the cuckoo clock and crush the little guys as they're dancing, inhibiting their freedom, then they have a little bit less free will, but it is nonetheless a dance. So that's how I see compatibilist free will. It's sort of like, yes, everything is a machine, everything is determined, but look how cute it is, look how fun it is, look how messy it is and complex it is, and wow, you reach out and you touch another human being, it's very soft and moist and interesting, isn't it? And you can get lost in that clockwork, this biochemical robot that you're interacting with, especially if you're having sex with them. It's like, wow, you can really get lost and caught up in that biochemical machine. But these compatibilists will say that's just part of the machinery. I get this feeling that I call love, and I get this urge to reproduce, and I get this impulse to go and pull my child off the railroad tracks when the train's coming. It's all very dramatic and it's all very exciting and juicy, but it's just a great big machine. Yes, we enter into these feelings, we have our desires, we have our preferences, and as long as I'm not being constrained, then I am free.
Well, there's missing pieces in that account. Like, there's things we don't know about what we are and how, and what explains experiences as we view them. There's some mystery there, and whether that can only be accounted for through supernatural explanations, I don't know.
Did you happen to listen to my interview of Graham Oppy?
Yep.
He really emphasized this compatibilist view, and he emphasized that what you're talking about, the history, these things that we can't analyze in the lab, we cannot reduce a person to biochemical stuff because there's something always going to be missing. And my counter argument was, it's just because if you're correct and that everything's determined, then it's only a question of technology. We don't have the right technology to access these sophisticated levels of human experience. But he wanted to sort of hide, I think, behind the complexity and say, ooh, there's something mysterious in there. But it's completely natural, but it's mysterious. But it's natural, but it's mysterious. But it's all determined, but it's free. But, it's frustrating that I can't get a straight answer. Life is very, very rich and very complex. And at the heart of life itself is a mystery from my perspective. So on the one hand, I shouldn't be frustrated because it's perfectly natural for an atheist to acknowledge the mystery. But the cognitive dissonance I see is, if you're acknowledging the mystery, then why are you denying the mystery? Do you know what I mean? Like why are you denying the supernatural? I just don't understand.
Well, I think what is natural and what's supernatural seems to be quite a hard thing for people to demarcate. And I've heard, a few definitions. I don't know. It just seems problematic. So I'm interested in how you define natural and supernatural.
The key component with the natural is that it's spatial, temporal, composed of parts, contingent, defective. So the supernatural is not complex, it's simple. The supernatural is not material, it's immaterial. And pure reason forces us to come to that conclusion. Because when we look at the natural world points to the supernatural world. The image that I like to use, and the image that one of my favorite saints and philosophers, St. Anselm of Canterbury, used, is the hierarchy of superlatives, for example, good, better, best. The other thing to look at is being itself. Like ontologically, we can look at being itself. There is inorganic matter, there is plant life, there is animal life, and there is human life. And we can see how one is more real or more alive than the previous category as we move up. And if we align ourselves with this progression, we look along that line, what do we see? We see being itself, we see supreme being, and we see something that is not contingent, that is not finite and limited and passing away. Like the pre-Socratic philosophers talked a lot about these sort of metaphysical concepts. What is the ultimate reality? Is it water? Is it wind? Is it fire? Is it this? Is it that? And there was a famous philosopher at that time who said that you never step into the same river twice because it's changing. Everything is in flux, right? So this is an essential philosophical component of justifying belief in the supernatural, is that everything here is in flux. Everything's passing away. I don't know if you've heard the paradox of the shipbuilder who wanted to repair his ship. And so he borrowed planks and he replaced them and on and on and on. This is what's happening with our bodies, right? And so we cannot be just a physical configuration of matter and energy. So I hope that gives you some hint as to why I'm very, 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 very convinced that the supernatural is a distinct realm and that it's a higher realm.
So like things like maths, would you call that supernatural, or?
The mind by which we do math, the mind in which we apprehend math, that is supernatural. The actual numbers themselves are relations, which are abstract.
Right. So in your definition of the natural, you said contingent. So in terms of contingent, what do you mean by contingent?
Dependent. There are many, 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 many factors that sustain us here, even if we take God out of the equation, which is impossible. But if, for the sake of argument, if we consider the universe to be 100% natural, we depend on the sun for the energy and the light and the warmth and all these sorts of things. And the plants use all of that energy to produce oxygen for us, and on and on and on and on and on. And as one of my guests said recently, there is no one particular thing that we could remove that would instantly snuff out our life. For example, if we were to remove all of the oxygen out of the room that I'm sitting in, it would take a couple of minutes for me to die, right? It's the same thing with food. It's like I haven't eaten for, an hour, but I'm still here. And I haven't had a drink of water for 3 minutes, but I'm still here. So do I need water? Do I need food? Do I need shelter? Do I need the sun? I mean, this network of contingency, this network of dependence that we have on everything is very complex.
Things are dependent on each other in the natural realm. So I would say that a naturalist would say that the universe in itself isn't dependent on anything else. So as a whole, it would be considered non-dependent, but everything within would be dependent on the other parts.
The universe and everything in the universe is sustained by the love of God. There is no possibility of anything maintaining its own existence. It's absolutely impossible categorically. The natural depends on the supernatural in that moment-to-moment sustaining way. I mean, there is absolutely no doubt about that. Can I convince you of that? Probably not, but...
Yeah, I understand that's your position. I guess the naturalists would probably say it doesn't need sustaining. It's just
self-sustaining.
Well, not even self-sustaining. It doesn't need sustaining. It just is.
It is what it is. Yeah.
So you mentioned in your last meta thing about your argument from entropy and how eventually things will have to go back to a first cause. Otherwise, the past would have gone on for an infinite amount of time. So the way I understand it is if the Big Bang is the beginning of the universe, it seems time began in the Big Bang, and you mentioned that time and space are one and the same thing. Without space, there's no time. So there has to be a first cause if things haven't gone back infinitely in the past. And so if we trace things back to the first point in time, it seems to me that the initial state of things at time zero might not need a cause, as there's no prior to the first point in time.
And this is the interesting question that you bring up. Maybe there's a first cause, but maybe that first cause is that singularity that is natural. It just happens to be the beginning. It's the beginning of time, it's the beginning of space, and it just is, okay? And the way that we can easily and quickly understand that that is not possible is by examining that first cause, that natural first cause, and asking ourselves, is it part of the fabric of space-time? Yes or no? And you're going to say yes. So it's part of the fabric of space-time. Space and time are not separable.
Well, it's not part of it. It is the fabric of space-time.
It's the totality. It's the totality of the fabric of space-time. It is. Yeah. Space and time are interwoven, and we cannot separate them. And so this singularity is all of space-time. It is by definition spatial. It is by definition temporal. Some people look at that and say, oh, it's really, really small, and time is really, really hard to grasp in the beginning, and all these sorts of things. But who cares? I mean, I don't care how small it is. It's infinitely big. It's everything. The relative size of the singularity is irrelevant to the question, is it spatial and is it temporal? Yes, it is, because it is space-time. It is space-time. It's all of space-time. So if you want to say that it has no beginning, then what you're saying is that there's a temporal material object, which we call the universe, that singularity. There's a temporal material object which has no beginning. But when you combine that notion of temporal with no beginning, what do you have? You have infinite time. For the sake of argument, let's do a thought experiment, and let's picture an hourglass where there's sands falling down from the top chamber to the bottom chamber. This is a way of counting time.
Yep.
You've seen these hourglasses, right?
Mm-hmm.
The entire universe and the entire history of the universe from its beginning until its end is nothing but a bunch of sand going from the top chamber to the bottom chamber. Okay? That's what the universe is. So never mind that we have planets and biological life. Never mind all that. The universe is just this hourglass. And I'm saying it cannot be uncaused because there's still grains of sand falling and the bottom chamber is not full yet. Therefore, if we go backwards in time, we're going to see those grains of sand flying up into the top chamber until the bottom chamber is empty. And then what? We can't just conveniently dismiss the temporal aspect.
Then it just doesn't make sense to say, then what? Because there was no then.
So it seems like you're admitting that the first cause is not natural because it's not spatial and it's not temporal. Is that correct?
Well, it might have a spatial or temporal point, but might not have much magnitude at all. I don't know.
Yeah. If you explore this idea of the natural first cause, I'm pretty confident that even though it's mind-boggling, I'm pretty sure that you can come to a firm conviction that the first cause cannot be natural, because if it's natural, it is necessarily temporal, and if it's necessarily temporal and it has no beginning, then it necessarily is infinite in time. And I know that you want to come back to that this is the edge of time, it's the beginning of time, and all that sort of thing, but in doing so, what you're actually admitting is that it came into being from nothing.
Well, yeah, in a way it came from nothing because nothing caused it, but in another way, I'm never saying that there was ever nothing to begin with.
In this thought experiment where the first cause is natural, do you admit that it's necessarily temporal or not?
It's the first point in time, so I guess that would be considered within time. Yeah.
Okay. You know the difference between a line and a ray?
Yeah. So it could be a ray, but potentially a line.
Okay. Yeah, so we didn't really make any progress there, but it's fun to chat about it. Another thing I like to talk about is reason itself, reasoning. Try to make a case for me, if you would please, that reasoning has any value whatsoever apart from the freedom to choose between different paths in an argument. How can we have reason absent free will?
I might get you to expand on that a bit. So what do you see as the difficulty between reason existing without free will?
Well, when you weigh the options in your mind and you go, maybe this, maybe that, well, that seems to be a process that involves free choice and exploration.
Okay, so I think I've got the idea. So say we are determined and we've got this phenomenon where we make choices. We're not sure which way to go, but we choose something in the end. So in that case, there's a calculation in our brain and it comes up with it, but it just because the options are so close together that it takes more processing. That's what you're thinking about. You don't know which one. And in the end, there will just be something in your nature or some other causal thing which will make you choose one over the other. That's how I would pass it under determinism. There's a book by Jonathan Haidt called The Righteous Mind, and he mentioned, say, our subconscious and our conscious, or one sort of automatic thinking process where we make choices and the other rational process to justify our choices. So maybe there's some sort of hardwired heuristic sort of rule of thumbs for making decisions in there, and then the analytic mind to sort of come up with a reasoning after the fact.
Would you want to live in a world where you only have the illusion of freedom, or would you prefer to live in a world where you truly are free, even though you can't understand what freedom is? Which world would you prefer to live in, a deterministic one or one with freedom?
Well, say it is a deterministic world, like I think it is. I enjoy it here, and I don't understand what it would mean to be free in, say, the libertarian sense. Then, I'm happy with the way it is. So if it is deterministic now, that's fine. I'm happy with it, and I wouldn't really understand what it would mean to be free.
Do you have a favorite religion? And if so, why is it your favorite?
Possibly Mormonism. The Mormons you meet tend to be very pleasant people, and they've got a strong sort of community.
It's a very good fit for you, Mormonism, because they believe the first cause is natural. There's no spiritual.
Yeah, well, I'll invite them in next time they're around and we can chat about it.
So at the end of my interviews, I always ask my guests to give a little closing thought. So what's a nice little parting message you could leave for my guests?
I think it's good that you listen to David Ross on Catholic Versus, because he's got a strong worldview, but he puts it out for criticism, and I think it's a good learning experience for everyone. So, yeah. Cheers, David.
If you like your worldview, if you think it's swell, if you got some questions, ask me and I'll tell. All you got to do is ask. All you got to do is ask.